Hello, I'm Sam Hollis from Sam Hollis Web Design. And in this video, I'm going to show you Google Analytics and take you through a tour. Take you through the basics of how to use it to get some basic information about your website. It can do all sorts of complicated things. We're not going to look at that now. This is going to be a basics tour, how to get some simple information about your website from Google Analytics. So very briefly, what does Google Analytics do? It gets data from your website and you can analyze it. Who's visited, when did they come, things like that. So let's jump straight in. We're going to presume you've got an account set up. If not, I'll go through that in another video. For now, I'm going to presume it's set up and you've got some data there. So the website is nice and simple. It's analytics.google.com. It'll take you to the home screen here. I'm looking at here a test account set up by Google, but you should have up here the name of your website and data coming from your website. So this is the home screen. This is where you first come from. It's got all sorts of useful information on here. There's a few advanced bits with this test site we're not going to look at. I'm not going to look at everything. As I say, this is a brief overview. Give you an idea of what it can do, what information you can get that's useful for you. Okay. First bit's really useful for you. This shows you for the last week how many visitors you've had. You can see on the chart here. So this has had 14,000 visitors, a popular site. You can see it going up and down. You can see the dotted line is last week's. Revenue there is if you've connected some e-commerce to it. That's linked to the conversion rate. And the sessions is how many different visits the website has had. So that's 16,000. You can see it's up 15% from the week before. You can go into more detail here in the audience overview. And where it says last 7 days, you can change that to the last 28, 90, whatever you want. You can get the timescale you want for your information. You can see here live users right now, often not that useful, but sometimes good. Remember, it's often you who's there. This bit is really useful. How do you acquire users? So wherever your users come from, how have people found your website? And you can see here, unfortunately, it's always in different shades of blue that are hard to differentiate, but that's how they do it. So you can see here, organic search. So they've people who've searched for a term on Google and have found you. We've got direct. So they've literally typed in the address pretty much, or they might have got linked to an email or something like that. Referral is a link from a different website. And then social is all your social media posts. And you can see where this website's getting things from on a day-to-day basis. If you're doing social media posts, often you may get spikes linked to certain posts. Session by country, worth keeping a vague eye on. This is a Google-based thing, it's US-based, and most of their visitors, you can see, are from the US. It's worth checking if you're a UK-based, which most of us are, and you're aiming for people in the UK, that most of your visitors are from there. If you've suddenly got a lot from Russia or a lot from the US, often there's a problem. Like your company happens to have a similar name from a state fair in Kansas, or more sinister things happening in Russia, things like that. So it is worth just looking at where your visitors are coming from and checking if you are UK based and you want UK based visitors, that's where they're coming from, otherwise it might indicate a problem. Time of day here may be useful for you if you think about posts and things like that. Anything live on your website just gives you an idea when people are there. What pages do people visit? We'll look more at that later. Your devices, this is useful. So how are people visiting your website? So this one here, you've got desktop 60%, mobile 36%, and tablet 2.4%. This can tell you a few things. It often tells you, if you're a business, about who the people are visiting your site. So if your desktop is much higher, say 70, 80%, that's often businesses, because they're the people sat at their desk using their desktop to look at things. If your mobile is much higher, that's often more to do with general public use. It gives you a bit of a picture and can also tell you what area of your website you want to focus on. User retention is good if you want people to come back. If your website is a one-hit wonder, you're not fussed. If you want to retain loyalty and people coming back, this can tell you how many people are coming back. You can see here 4.3% of the people from last week came back this week, and then from 2 weeks ago it's 2 and 1, so they haven't got a great deal of retention here. I'm going to leave these other things. They're the main things we're going to look at here. So along the side you've got more options. As I say, there's lots here, but we're only going to look at one or two. We're going to look at audience first of all. So you click the arrow and more options come, and we'll get an overview. All of these have an overview, and that gives you a sort of picture of what's going on generally, and then you can dive in for more information. Always in these areas, there's lots more information where and when you need it. So here we go. This is giving us an overview of our audience. We can see here visitors, which we've already talked about. You can change those from hourly, weekly, monthly, however you want. You can see who are new and returning, languages, and all those sorts of things, operating system. We've got a few extra things here. Users, 13,000, so this is in the last week. New users, so 11,780 of those are new users, so never been to the website before. There's 16,000, about 16,481 sessions. So there's more sessions than users. So a session is when somebody goes to a website and stays on it and visits different pages. So there's more sessions than users because some users have come back to the website more than once within the week. We can see here number of sessions per user, 1.21. Pages per session, 4.63. So that means on average people are visiting 4 or 5 pages when they visit the website. Now you can drill down in that, and sometimes it's actually that there are 2 groups and some are visiting 1 and lots are visiting 10. Or it might be 4 or 5 is about normal. You can see how long the average session is here, 3 minutes, and you can then break that up into different categories of visitor and things. And here's your bounce rate. So some people get very worried about bounce rate. A bounce rate of 41% is really good. What is a bounce is the most important thing. So a bounce is when somebody goes to your website, looks at it, but they do nothing else. They don't click on anything and they leave. It gives no indication of time, how long they were there, but it does tell you they leave. Now, for some people, they just went to the wrong website, and you're always going to get people going to your website who didn't mean to go there, so there'll always be some bounce from that. For other people, they find what they want straight away. They might just want your phone number. Go to your homepage, there's your phone number, they call you on the phone and they don't click anything. They've bounced, but actually, that was a useful visit. They've done what they wanted, they've got what they wanted, and they've left. So don't get too hung up about bounce rate. If it's really high, it can be a problem. But if it's 50% or below, that's pretty amazing. If you're sort of 70 above, it's time to start thinking maybe you need to do something about it. But don't get too hung up about it. Lots of bounces are useful visits. And lots of bounces will always happen. There will always be people who go to your website by mistake. It just happens. Right, what else have we got here? Let's have a little look. We're going to go then, so we looked at the audience, we're going to go to acquisition, the next one. So this is, where are you getting your visitors from? This is really useful to know. How are people finding your website? So if you're putting effort into particular areas, is that working? And are they coming from other places you hadn't thought of? So the pie chart gives you a good picture. There's quite a few sections here. It just gives the first few. Most people only have the first 4 or 5. So these guys have 55% of organic search. That means people typing something into Google, finding your website and clicking on it. Not an advert, finding your website. So they're heavily reliant on that. Direct is they've typed in directly the website, or they've clicked on it from an email, something outside the web. So that's about 20%. Maybe they've been working on marketing campaigns via email. They've got 15% here referrals, that's links from other sites. And they've got a really small social there, 3.5%. And there's other stuff we're not going to worry about too much. There's often other. It can be a problem heavily relying on one thing here, Google search. So if you get a problem with the search, so Google gets upset with your website, something happens, it drops down the ranking, you can lose a lot of these people. And if you haven't got other areas to cover, that can be a real issue for your website. So it's really good to try and get a balance here of different sources, not rely on one. So we've got our channels there. We can also see acquisition here. So we can see for those different channels, we can see how the people behave differently. So we can see how numbers we've got, but also things like bounce rate for different groups of people, and also conversions in the e-commerce side here. You can also, if it's connected, which it isn't for this account, look at Search Console here. So you can find out what search terms people are using to find you, and then look at for different search terms how they're behaving on your website. That's really powerful. If you haven't got it linked up here, I will do a different video to show you how you can link the two together and get the power from that. The last thing I'm going to look at then is behavior. So that's where people are going and what they're doing once they're on your website. So we'll just give that a second to load up. So this is going to show you how people can move around the website and what they do when they're there. Again, we've got page views, which we've had before. The main thing I find useful here, though, is this behavior flow. So if we click on behavior flow, it shows you how people are moving around your website. Now, this is actually a Google example, and actually they're showing you how people are moving from different platforms like YouTube and Google and Android and all those sorts of things. But for you, these different things would be pages on your website. And it's just a flow of what people are doing. So this is the place they start. So that's the home page. And then you've got different pages here. And when there's a flow there, it means they're flowing to a different section of the site. The red bit then means people dropping off. So from this section, that many people leave. So it's all pictorial here, you can see. And that many people go to different pages. And it can really show you how your site is working and how people flow through your website. You can see from the home page, lots of people going to one section. Do you want to direct them to another? Or what do you need to do to make that happen? So you can really see pictorially at a glance what's happening on your website and how big the drop-off rate is. You can see there for this big 14,000 people, they're losing 13,090 5.9% are dropping out. So you can see that's a big issue. What are we going to do about that page and why are people dropping out? You can once you look at what else is happening, where are they going, where are people going, how are they flowing around the site, and how is that working? That can be really useful to you. So there is huge amounts of other information here. You can spend hours looking at the data, manipulating the data, getting different searches, finding out how this is useful to you and your website. But I've just given you a brief overview. Hopefully that is useful to you. So I'm Sam Hollis from Sam Hollis Website Web Design. That was an overview of Google Analytics. I hope that is useful to you.